up. Abumama you honey way, abumama you honey way, kabumi way, kanu abumi way, kabumi way, yeah, kabumi way, kabumi way, abumama you Habum Shango in Neptune, Habum Shango in Jupiter, Shango Bigo Bianaba, Shango Kavango Kaka. Welcome everyone. Shimoge here, back again. Thank you to my returning viewers. Welcome to Inquiry. I was just over on Shimoge's comments. Check out the live stream I just did there. Today, another anger segment. I'm going to figure out, as the title says, Dr. Umar's reluctance to work as an IFA priest full-time. And I'll explain that in a second. Let me do a longer greeting for the new people. Given name, Shimoge. Foremost nickname, Moge. Anyone who can, let me say it like this. Anyone can also call me Moge in addition to my given name, Shimoge. My government name is Shimoge Chijoke Ibe. My alternate white structured name, which is a longer form of the government name that created the government name, or rather the government name came out of that, is Shimoge Chijoke Ibe Muko. Obviously, the components of the alternate white structured name are not white, but the idea of having a first, a middle, and a last name is white, and I'll leave it at that. Where am I currently? I'm in the Oshun of this world. I'm in the sacral chakra of this world. I'm in a subset of it that people have artificially called Atlanta, Georgia. And this is where I live. I was born in Washington, D.C., the southeast part, another arbitrary demarcation made by mankind in evil times. And I'll leave it at that. That's part of a sector of the world that spirits tell me should rightly be called Rome. In the language that forms the basis of English, Latin, you can also call it Rome. That means the sector of Oshun. Yes, I am a Roman. A Biramosa. Abumamadio Hamadio Hanway. I'm the Roman, Amadio. I'm the Emperor of Rome, Onishiaka. Abum Caesar Abiramosa. Abum Augusta. Abumamadio. Abum Augusta Kakaka. Abum Augusta Nuanketa. Hail to Caesar Abum. Yeah. Yeah, you heard me anyway. We reincarnate. And I'm not saying I was a European in my past life. I'm just saying that term applies to Amandio, so you know. Anyway, I've registered viewers. I see 10 on the screen. That's the number of Caesar. Thank you very much. Every view is a blessing. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for your comments as well. Every comment is a blessing. I read comments at my discretion. Let's continue with the greeting. My matrilineal village is Ebemahafia there in West Africa. The reference point village for my patrilineage is Ajigurat, also there in West Africa. Look them up. Let me give 2 facts about myself, then I'll keep going. 1, I like to clap my hands when I'm talking. 2, I like peach powder. I had it for the first time yesterday and earlier today. It's very good. Good for my well-being. And I'll leave it at that. But, bonus piece of information. Eat peach powder. It's good for you. Anyway. Now, let's talk about Dr. Umar Nifal. Let me take a seat. You see, we live in a world where racism has, destroyed people's understanding of how to think and how to receive information. Forgive me. Chapped lips. Forgive me. It is what it is. Alright, anyway. So we live in a world where that's been happening. And then because of that, I'm trying. Anyway, because of that, there are many useful bodies of information, particularly those who were created by black people and or who shine out the idea of having been created by black people that are unacknowledged. The body of knowledge within, I'll just call them things that are referred to with the term IFA, um, are firmly among those. I would put them in two categories. One, stuff that comes from the cult of IFA, and I don't want to be too pejorative. For the record, the three biggest cults on the earth today are the cult of atheism, the cult of secularism, and the cult of Christianity. So, we really just need to not pay as much attention to other cults in that way. At the same time, we need to call them out when we see them. There is a cult called IFA, as in a rigid thought system with loose parameters, and I'll leave it at that. So there's body of knowledge in there. And then there are many other things and or events, whatever you want to call them, that are referred to with the term IFA. And I'll leave it at that. It can get vague, you see. But the point is, a lot of stuff that gets that label, just like a lot of other stuff that gets the label African spirituality, is unfairly demonized both objectively and relative to information that comes out of those other three cults. If an atheist comes up and says, I thought about it after reading 10 books and I think A, people will consider it. If someone says I did an IFA divination and it told me thing A is true, people will doubt it. Let me move. Abu Mamadio Hamadio Hanuai, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Hai, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Kanua, Kanua Abu Maki, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Bob, Abu Mamadio Hamadio, Pop, Abu Mamadio Hamadio, Nu Abu Mamadio Hamadio Kanu, Abu Mamadio Hamadio. Bob album Hamadio, new album Shango album Caesar Boo on OG, new album Hamadio, Bob Hail Caesar, Kala Kana, Hail Caesar Boo Kala Kana, album Kala Nanaman. Album Okike, album Hamadio, new way, album Hamadio, Bob album Hamadio, Pop, album Hamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio Agoji, Aguanyan, Agu, Shunabu Mamadio, Bob Amadio, Abu Mamadio, Nuaya, Abu Mamadio, Papa Abu Mamadio, Nasha, Kala Kanin, Kasha, Bia, Kala Kanin, Titi Nebe, Oji, Titi Osha, Kaloji, Titi Osha, Nu Abuya. Anyway, just singing. So the point is, in that environment, a lot of information is left on the table and is not shown to the general public. Because I want to make this clear. I hate cults more than almost anything because they prevent information from being assessed properly. You cannot assess information properly in completeness in your closet. You must come out and show the information to the light so that the collective can take a look at it and that information can have children. Because before information has children, we cannot know what it is. You cannot know who a man is until he has had grandchildren. And I'll leave it at that. Abu Mamadio Hamadio Hanua, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Bob, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Bob, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Hanua, Hanua Abu Mamadio, Hanua Abu Mokike, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Hanua, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Bob, Bob, Abu Mamadio Hamadio Noji, Abu Moji Hamadio. Abu Moji Amadio, Abu Moji Oki Cake, Abu Mamadio Amadio Hanuaya. Anyway, I've made my point there. In this context, Dr. Umar Johnson's failure to operate full-time as a FA priest for whatever reason, and I'm going to get into that right now, is another fault. And let me just say this. I'm someone who... and again, I don't know how to explain it. Cults have destroyed the world. But basically, if I wanted to, unless there was some political nonsense, I could clearly become a quote-unquote a FA priest or any other equivalent. I've not done so because I'm not a fan of cults, one. And two, I'm not a fan of labels that don't make sense. So I'm not saying that becoming an Ifa priest categorically makes sense. I don't think it does. At the same time, I've been a proponent of the idea that, the education system needs reform. And, I'll just kind of keep that there. So you should know my position on excessive quote unquote formal education. And I'll just leave it at that for now. That's a big discussion. Ancestral advice. Agwasha tagua. Nana ya Nigeria call bone cause. Abu Mamadua Madua Nime. Abu Mamadua Madua Nime. Abu Mamadua Madua Nime. Abu Mamadua Shango. Abu Shango Abiara Maza. Abu the Caesar Madua. Hail to Caesar Augusta. Abu Augusta. Abu Mamadua. Anyway, what am I saying here? Dr. Umar Johnson obviously has obtained a lot of formal education in the Western academic system, hence the doctor, but he's also said that he was ordained to be an Ifa priest. And, well, this is where it gets a little murky. You see, he hasn't said exactly which structure. I mean, he's mentioned some organization before, but it's not clear which that one that is. I'll just say he hasn't made it clear enough which structure ordained him and what the conditions were, things of that nature. And he has not made it completely clear just what exactly that means. And this is what I want to get into. In the climate of our world today, if he were to have dovetailed what he was already doing with being an Ifa priest, whatever that means, he could have actually taught people a lot of things. He could have taught people a lot about information related to quote unquote African spirituality in terms of the metaphysical information they have. And then he could have also showed people more of what that looks like to be a quote unquote Ifa priest. Why is this valuable? So that we can at least know what we're dealing with. Because when it comes to things like African spirituality, and I'm just using that term to be quick, really, when people say African spirituality, they're referring to metaphysical information that looks like it came out of Africa. Let me move. Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Nukwaya, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Kigega, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Bob, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Bob, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Nukwaya, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Paul Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Nuwa Bum Madiwa Nuwa Bum Shango Biramaza Bum Kala Kanu Nuwanketa. Anyway, because the general public doesn't have a good idea of what say being an Ifa priest and other similar things in the African spiritual zone mean and look like, and because there's so many stereotypes around it, and because there's a good gap in discourse, it would be helpful if he had done that. But then also, when we're trying to assess his actions as a person, it would be good if he was more consistent in that regard. Because for someone who's constantly calling themselves the Prince of Pan-Africanism, and I just want to reveal this here. Apparently the word prince is another word for the devil. Let me move. I mean, just read stories of the Middle Ages. Was that a good time? Nuwa kala kind wanna be a nuwa kala kind no kike. Anyway, so I mean the term Prince of Pan Africanism really is a big contradiction. That is the end, but it is what it is. Anyway, let me shift. The whole point is it's just very strange. So it puts a lot of what he's doing into question. So you saw the studies I've set up before. If you haven't checked them out in the previous Anger segments, I was studying his view of, I think I called it religion or God. I need to check the paper again. And in there, I wanted to examine his beliefs about African spirituality and also Ifa separately. I believe I separated those. But now it occurs to me I want to do an additional study focusing on IFA. Maybe that's a subset of looking at IFA. I don't know. I'm still figuring out how to structure these studies. And again, the goal of these studies is to produce chukwu. It'll end in a soccer game. That is part of the divination process. In fact, that's the end of the divination process. And before the soccer game, there will be a game of what we call basketball. Fema dioha, anger. Yeah, you gotta put some money on that. What's the truth? Anyway, the whole point is I'm just figuring that out. Now, I don't have a paper with me, but I'm trying not to overwrite, and also it just wasn't convenient for me to bring a paper here today. So I'm just gonna think. Give me a second. I think I'm singing and thinking, I am the Caesar, I go, the Caesar, I go. Caesar, Abum Caesar, Abum Caesar, Abum Caesar, Caesar, say, Susa, Abum Caesar, Universal, Abum Hamadu, Abum Hamadu, Bob, Abum Hamadu, all pay. First, because I have to hone in on what he said about Ifa specifically, so I can't do very general things like look at his interviews. That's why it gets hard, because he kind of peppers it in here and there. Has he even done a full video specifically about This is where it gets hard. Do I have to just ponder questions? What am I doing? I am the Caesar, boom, hell Caesar, cease and desist, cease and desist, okay, karatana, cease and desist, that is the Caesar, interesting. Anyway, I think I just have to ponder some questions, but how do I fit that into a study context? Let's look at the format of this. So I'm coming up with 4 questions to ponder. And you know what? That's what it is. Each question, I just comb everything. I have to look. I also want to add something. I myself and many other Black people look into African spirituality because after a while we found that what was given to us that was not demonized by society, it just failed, you see? Because I've talked a lot about how I had health issues that I'm still overcoming, although I can see the end of the light at the tunnel. I've also talked a lot about chaos in my family. You see, when you're trying to solve those issues, the things that society have commonly given us to look through just fail. So then it's helpful. It would have been helpful if more information had been provided by people who knew of other things, so we could at least comb all the information that our category of life had efficiently. But that's not done. So in that context, Dr. Umar just kind of teasing a fast stuff out there is not good enough. Anyway. Caesar, 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 Akila naka Madio Nuwai Abu Madio Hamadio Haba Babum Jada Dada Amadio Habum Jada Naka Amadio Habum Kajana Kasaga kakala kana abumadiyo. So, what's the goal of this study? What am I showing? I know what it is. I don't know how to articulate it. Let me look. And then obviously be a bear at the end. I'm going to do an ego segment for each question I'm looking at. After I feel satisfied with the seeking out process, I'll just say what I found. So yeah. Abumela shangele kabumela shangele no abumela shangele kakabum shangele la 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 ujela kakabum ka ujela la 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 Amadio Anyway, please like, share, and subscribe. Please also patronize my business. Buy my art especially. You can check out my about section for all that. Yeah, anyway, still thinking. How do I articulate the goal of this study? Let's do a first articulation. Goal of the study: to show that Dr. Umar Johnson has been irresponsible in his handling of the knowledge he obtained from so-called IFA. Okay, that's an equency. Let's ponder that. Abumamadio Nivea, Abumamadio Caesar, Abumamadio Candua, Abumamadio Kike, Abumamadio Madio Bob, Abumamadio Madio Pop, Abumamadio Madio, Kaka Abumamadio Madio, Abumamadio Madio, Abumamadio Madio Candua. Kala kanu ke ajabum kala kanu kabum kala kanu bobo babum kala kanu abum kala kanu nuange tabum amadiu kakabum amadiu kakabum amadiu nuayabum amadiu bobe abum amadiu nive abum amadiu no abum Bobby Abumadiwa, Coca Abumadiwa, Nacha. I think I can articulate that better. Let me think. Still thinking. Kala Kanu Kewa, Kala Kanu no Kike, Abunda Caesar on a Bielza, or Cookie that Caesar Kaka. Ugala, that animal we call the turkey, rightfully called Ugala, the eagle of the land, can also be called Caesar. Interesting. When you think about it, don't its feathers look like swords? Kalakanu niwe abum kalakanu no kike kabum kalakanu zise susabum kalakanu abumadio kalakanu ko kike ka kalakanu zise susabum kalakanu niwe abum kalakanu iye abum kalakanu biko kabum kalakanu zise sabum kalakanu no kike abum agua bukalakanu agua bukalamanu manu agua abumagua kalakanu ne bielzo kalakanu ne chua kalakanu no kike kabum kalakanu zizezuza kalakanu ho abum kalakanu nagoya agua meshabua madio agua meshabua kike agua kaka agua biko ka ekenshishio puruzuku epoya nkeacha bounce Madio yeah Madio Bob Madio Pop Madio Pop Madio Bob Madio yeah Madio Cock Madio Bob Madio Madio Kabumamadio, no Abumamadio, Kakabumamadio, Kakabum Pikachu in Cabwa, Pikachu, Isha channel, no Ambumachelo, Kaka, Animachelo, Kaka, Achu in Kelu, ha, Abum Caesar, ha, hail to Caesar, Amadio, ha. Hail to Caesar, Okike, ka. Abum Saturn, kaka. Abum Saturn, kaka. Anime Wiwe, ha. Anime Lechi, ha. Anime Kachi, ha. Agame Kachu, ha. Boom Madio, I am the top cop, Anumanu Madio. Another thing I want to make clear. We need to end this culture of thinking that because we see a distorted version of it, there's not a proper version of it, Natu Matu. Police, Amadioha, same thing. I'll be honest, the entities we refer to as police in the world today are really just glorified gangs. And the entities we refer to as gangs are really unspeakable. Let me move. Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Nuway, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa Nuwa, Abu Mamadiwa Madiwa, Abu Mamadiwa Shanu, Abu Mamadiwa, Pop Abu Mamadiwa, Pop Abu Mamadiwa, Wawa, I am the hand of God, I am the great grandfather of the king, Biarazonu. Baba Nana, cha cha cha, boom 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 Baba Nana, cha cha cha. I'll say two things to expand upon that. One, the entities we refer to as police in the world today are really all male groups, basically. Yes, I know they're female police officers, but we have to be honest. The idea they project out is they're just a bunch of men holding weapons who are here to zobu oha, to step on the people. That is a gang. Point two, the things we call gangs are really so useless because you see, gangs in hell have some use. The things we call gangs are so useless that they're only gangs by technicality because bodies of leadership have elevated gangs to the level of police. And I'll leave it at that. Anyway. You know what? Well, let's just say, what's the goal of this? Let me be an Njoku. Let me just say the goal of this is to say that Dr. Umar Johnson is bad. No, seriously, I'm just gonna say something like that. The goal of this study is just to say that Dr. Umar Johnson is bad, and the way he handled the IFA information and all related things is bad. Okay. So I'm an Njoku, but you know Njoku is the god of thunder, so he can just come through. Alright, let's come up with the questions. Alright, what are the 4 questions to ponder? Kabrunam Nogo. Is it? Animemize, Abumeze, Kamzeze. Question 1. Change the move. Abuminjoku Okikeka, Abuminjoku Zizesusa, Abuminjoku Joku Kaka, Abum the great grandfather of the king, Abum the great grandfather of the thing, Abuminjoku Joku Joku Jaja, Abumingui Ekizenu, Abumegui Wanamenu, Abuminjoku Joku Kaka, Abuminjoku Joku Kaka, Abuminjoku Joku Kaka, Abuminjoku Abumadio. Kajo injoku otu ha kajo mamadio ha ke bo be. Question 1. Why did Dr. Umar no it's hard. Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio. No Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio Naki. Abu Mamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio. Bob Abu Mamadio. Yeah, Abu Mamadio. Kakabu madiwa, nuabu madiwa, nuabu madiwa, shango ma, nuabu ma shango na nuabu madiwa, niwabu ma shango, kakabu baba. No, because I want one question to be something like, why did Dr. Umar choose to become an IFA priest? But it's hard to form that question because I don't really know what he means when he said he became an IFA priest. Because it's like, the kind of, to be in Njoku, the world of quote unquote ordinations and things is very vague. And there's not a unified body, there's not a unified standard. And then on top of that, there's not like a video of him, at least to my knowledge, getting ordained or whatever. And also, this is a man who lies. For all we know, he lied. But, anyway, let's move. Also, as usual, when dealing with cults, I don't care what backyard information you have that I don't. If you haven't shown a light on it, it doesn't exist. Kakabu madiwa, nuabu madiwa, biahoza. Kala kanunakua, kala kanu kike, abum kala kanu sisa, abum kala kanu naku, abum kala kanu. Kakabum kala kanu, sha, biko kabum, biko kara biko kabum mamadiwa. Niwe abum biketi abum mamadio. Biketi abum mamadio. I'm only allowed one Njoku action, so that ended with the articulation of the goal. Umar bad. Abum mamadio. What have we here? Kala kanu ke ochabum kala kanu no kike abum kala kanu kakabum kala kanu nuabum kala kanu kakabum kala kanu bababum kala kanu ahabum 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 kala kanu. Abum kala kanu. Niwe abum kala kanu. Nime abum joku joku kaka. I am Caesar Amadio. Amadio abum kala kanu no kike. Abum kala kanu zizezuza. Kala kanu biau. Abum kala kanu no anketa. Let me approach this somewhat from the lens of, let's say, a person of the general public who first hears Dr. Umar say something about IFA and wants more information. Let's approach it like that. I think that's the best way to approach it. Because the problem is he's kind of teased information, not giving it out. And this is the other thing. He's been repeating a lot of things he's been saying about other topics. And again, obviously you have to repeat what you're saying. If you just say something once and never say it again, that is ekwensu. But the rate of repetition relative to the rate of new information and the usefulness of the old information relative to the usefulness of the new information is off. So, what does that say? Let's look at myself. So I hear Dr. Umar say Ifa something. Okay. My first question, how did he come to know about it? So that's question one. How did Dr. Umar come to know about Ifa? Hasn't really explained in detail. And just saying I'm black and I read a book is not quite enough. Anyway, but let's make that question one. Abu Mamadio Nuwa, Abu Mamadio Kaka, Abu Mamadio Kanu, Abu Mamadio Kika, Abu Moki Kaka, Abu Moki Kaka Kariana. Thinking. Abu Mamadio Nuwa, Abu Mamadio Kika, Abu Mamadio Ziza. Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio Kake Abu Mamadio Kake Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio Kake Abu Mamadio Kake Abu Mamadio Abu Mamadio anyway. Abu Mamadio Nike. Abu Mamadio Nominike. Amunike Amadio. Okike Abu Mokike Kakarayana. Abu Mokike Abu Mamadio. Amadio Anuwaya. First, how did Dr. Umar come to know about Ifa? Second, first question. What things has Dr. Umar engaged with that he's labeled Ifa? And I'll leave it at that, because again, this is a vague grouping. Second, how did Dr. Umar come to know about these things? Third, what metaphysical information has he obtained from these things? And that is really what the general public wants to know. I'll leave it at that. Then fourth, why has he chosen not to shine out his associations and or knowledge more? Let's think of a better way to articulate that. Abu Mamadio Anumana Allah, police, animal of the land. Yes, there are certain categories of life that are naturally the police. For example, the animals we call lions, aguanyangu. That is a manifestation of the police. They're an animal of the land. They get more respect than other animals. The more you disrespect them, the more it affects you relatively. Another example, anything you would call a squirrel. Well, almost anything. I'll leave it at that. That is Oshun. Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Nuwaya Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Kaka Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Bobe Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Nule Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Kaka Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Nuwe Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Bobe Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Bobe Abuma Madiuha Madiuha Papa Bumamadio Hamadio Naki, Labumamadio Hamadio, Papa Bumamadio Hamadio, Papa Bumamadio Hamadio, Here Bumamadio Hamadio, Baba Bumamadio Hamadio Nakua. What has Dr. Umar engaged with that he's labeled IFA? 2. How did he find these things? 3. What metaphysical information has he obtained from these things? And then 4. Why has he chosen not to shine out? And this is where English is destroying me. For why has he chosen not to more consistently display but then how do I integrate? No, I think 4 is why has he chosen not to more actively be an IFA priest? And I'll just say that. And I'll just say this. If he's done a lot of private IFA activity, that doesn't really count. He's always talking about how many degrees he has publicly and saying he's the Prince of Pan-Africanism. Why has he not integrated the IFA priest thing more into his public persona? And if he's done it in some sort of secret cult way, that doesn't count either. Anyway, I think that's it. This is all up in the air. I didn't write it down, but I'm trying to improve my thinking without writing, so this is a good exercise. All right, and then that's the study. Yes. Abuma Madioha Madioha Kaka Abuma Madioha Madioha Kanu Abuma Madioha Madioha Kanu Abuma Madioha Madioha Kike Abuma Madioha Nive Abuma Madioha Kike Abuma Madioha Madioha Bobo Abuma Madioha Madioha Pawpaw Abuma Madioha Madioha Kaka Abuma Madioha Madioha Nu Abuma Madioha Madioha Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Nuwa Buma Madio Madio, Alhamdulillah Madio, Habu Alhamdulillah Buma Madio Madio, Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Kanuwa Buma Madio Madio, Kaka Buma Madio Madio, Kaka. Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Nuwa Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Bob Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Pepe Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Pop Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Pop Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Niwe Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Kaka Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Naki Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Bob Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Nuwa Abuma Madiwa Madiwa Kanua Shimoge Inkeram Kala Kana Inkishi Newu Kaya Kala Kana Inkishi Inkua Abumya Abuma Madiwa Kala Kana Inkishi Inkua Kala Kana Marishiwa Abuma Madiwa Kaka Abuma Madiwa Nuwa Abuma Madiwa Negajana Abuma Madiwa Nala Abuma Madiwa Nelukwana Abuma Madiwa Nenu Juko ala Nelu, Enu Abu Madio Madio, Enu Abu Madio Madio, Neze. Abu meze karama, abu mama kareze, ya eze amabu kalaka, kalaka bua makwana, wala kalaka bua mama, abu mama ka, adoka, amaka, kanua abu mama dioha. Please like, share, and subscribe. Join the Patreon, patronize the business. Thank you very much. See you.